3 of the myCourses Essential, or not myCourses, Course Design. Good morning. Course Design Essentials Day 3. Today we'll be looking at strategies and next steps. So it's really good to see you all here this morning. My name is Jenny Ferris. I'm joined by colleagues Carolyn Samuel, Rose Alatinacci, and Barbara Steckerson. So we have, just looking through here, we'll jump right in. So this model is probably starting to look pretty familiar to you at this point. This is our course design model. And at this point, we've gone through quite a good portion of it. On the first day, we had, or pre-first day, we had looked at some questions around context. Thinking about contents as well. So what are your courses? What are you trying to ensure that students learn in terms of the content? And the really key aspect of that, looking at how that plays out in the learning outcomes. So what will students know, value, and be able to do was day 1. We built on that yesterday with the assessments, thinking about how you and your students will know the extent to which those outcomes have been achieved through things like assignments and exams. And that brings us to today, where we're looking at strategies, instructional strategies, and thinking about what engagement and interaction activities will support learning. And of course, emphasizing the idea of context, because different course contexts will be necessarily different. We realize that some of you will be teaching in the fall online, some may be teaching on campus in person, and some may be teaching in some combination of those ways, so blended. Today's session outcomes are, we have 2. First, to draw on key ideas that can inform your choice of instructional strategies. And second, to identify strategies that can help students practice and get feedback so they can successfully complete their course assignments. So you began exploring how students might prepare for their assessments in yesterday's webinar. And in the About Learning video and the 7 key ideas strategies described on myCourses, you saw some additional ideas for various strategies to support students' learning. And today we'll continue building on some of those ideas by thinking about opportunities students have for practice and get feedback on their learning along the way. The aim being that by the end of today, you'll be equipped to complete your course alignment plan. So besides the fact that I think this is a beautiful image of a bridge, we wanted to introduce a metaphor here. Thinking about the question, how can students practice and get feedback so they can successfully complete their course assessments? The answer that we're going to suggest, which should not be a surprise for those of you who've seen the, been with us along the way and considering some of the resources on our myCourses website, is strategies. So thinking about how strategies form a bridge between learning outcomes and assessment. And this really comes back to that idea of alignment. So how do the different portions of a course relate to one another? How do our strategies and assessments and outcomes relate to one another? And this brings us back to the video that the student that we shared with the student towards the end of yesterday morning's webinar. And I realized that we were going sort of full tilt in terms of speed at that point. So I wanted to just come back to that for a moment because I really appreciated what the student said about how when the process of evaluation is spread out, so not just an assignment and then a final exam at the very end of a course, it gives you a chance to try exercises along the way as if you're having mini exams all the time without the grade. So that idea is that you can have a more complete understanding over the duration of a course where there is that consistent opportunity for practice and feedback. So another thing I'll mention is that when we think about this idea of formative assessment, formative opportunities, times to practice and get feedback along the way in a course, we can also think about formative opportunities for learning to use teaching and learning tools as well. You might recall that that final column on your course alignment plan is about thinking about the technology tools we use. So thinking about how students can have an opportunity to practice using the tools before there's something high stakes for them. We wanted to invite you to share in the chat, but not quite yet. The question is, what is one instructional strategy that you have found works well in your teaching? And when we refer to instructional strategies, we're talking about activities that promote student interaction or engagement, whether with another person or with the material. And so I'm going to ask you to share that in the chat, but I'm going to ask you to think about it for about 30 seconds first. And the reason I'll actually explain why I'm asking you to do that afterwards. So for now, please take about 30 seconds to think about an instructional strategy that you have found works well in your teaching. And this could be from your remote teaching experience or when teaching in person or in the blended way. And in about 30 seconds, I'll invite you to share that in the chat. Okay, so now that you've had some time to think, I'd invite you to share an instructional strategy or a teaching strategy. So as Carolyn put in the chat, we use those terms interchangeably, that you found works well in your teaching. Small groups with individualized support, student feedback to reinforce a concept or lesson that has not been well understood. Think, pair, share first, rather than asking a question and waiting through that awkward silence. Having student summaries and presenting a scientific paper in groups, and pure mini presentations in small groups. Turning point, right? So using polling to ask multiple choice questions to validate whether the students understood the concept taught. And again, as Carolyn mentioned yesterday, I'm reading these aloud since that way these ideas that you're sharing with us can be accounted for in the recording, so that if colleagues aren't able to attend this morning, they can benefit from your ideas as well at a later point. Great, thank you. So feel free to keep the ideas coming. I do want to explain why I asked you to pause first before writing. This is a strategy called a think break. And there will be a link in the chat shortly about the think break strategy. And the idea is that it's sort of a modified version of the think, pair, share that Alexander mentioned. It's a think share, if you will. So by giving thinking time before calling on students to contribute, it gives students who might not always be having an answer right within 2 seconds of the question being posed, time to reflect. And personally, I appreciate having time to think without being distracted by other ideas that might be really interesting ideas, but possibly interrupt the thinking process for myself. This is something that we're trying to give that sort of individual reflection time, followed by a sharing time. I forgot my slide animation. That was typing. You did that already. Thank you. Using chat to encourage participation. Absolutely. So we already have a wealth of ideas that you've shared here in the chat, and we're going to move into breakout rooms in a couple of minutes. Oh, I see another idea coming in. First, explain what the students think at the top of the class, and then ask them to review if similar at the end. Absolutely. So the sort of pre and post, or trying to get a sense of what their initial background knowledge is, and then how that might change over the course of the class. These are really great approaches. Thank you for sharing these. We're going to move into breakout rooms in a couple of minutes. And this is another opportunity for you to connect with one another, to share ideas with the same groups that you've been working with along the course of the Course Design Essentials, both in myCourses and during these webinars. And the purpose of this breakout room is for you to have a chance to discuss the key ideas that you identified from the 7 key ideas reading in myCourses. So I've just put the link there for your ease of access. So this was one of the readings in the strategies section for today. And we had invited you to read this brief reading and wrote at least 2 ideas within the brief reading, and to pick one that you would like to discuss further with colleagues. So the guiding questions for the breakout room are on this slide, and Rose is also going to put them in the chat. And if you recorded your answers to these questions already in myCourses, feel free to draw on them during the discussion. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment, and then we can go into the breakout rooms.
Jenny, for how long will we be in the breakout rooms?
Excellent question. Thank you. We'll be in the breakout rooms for about 12 minutes.
And maybe we should say a word about technical difficulties.
Yes, let's do. So again, thank you everyone for your forbearance yesterday with the technical difficulties during the breakout rooms. We will give it a whirl again today. We're optimistic it will work smoothly. If there are difficulties in your breakout rooms, yesterday we had a group that for reasons unknown to us, despite some technical follow-up, there were difficulties with hearing with the audio. Please come back to the main room and we'll have a discussion here. So that will be sort of our workaround if there are any difficulties in the breakout rooms themselves. I've received a message from somebody who doesn't have access to myCourses, and the content is longer than one screen. So what I'd invite you to do is in your breakout rooms, it is possible for people to share within breakout rooms. So I'd invite one of your colleagues in your group to share the myCourses screen with the 7 key ideas on it once you're in the breakout room itself. So with that, Barbara will be sending us imminently into breakout rooms. It might take a couple of minutes for everyone to get into them, but we'll be in breakout rooms for about 12 minutes.
Okay, we may have everybody or just about everybody back. Okay, so this looks good. All right, well, welcome back, everybody. We hope you had a productive conversation in your small groups. We had given you 2 questions to address, and we would just like to take a moment to find out if there's anything that came up in your groups that might be worth sharing with the larger group, if there were any salient points that could be of interest to other members of this larger group. And of course, we're always interested in hearing if you have pending questions. So please take a moment. You can put up a hand, you can unmute yourself and speak. You can type something in the chat, whatever you like.
Someone's hand is raised.
Oh, thank you. I couldn't see it from here. So Alex, please go ahead if you'd like to speak. Thanks, Rose.
So coming off the second point of the promote engagement in coursework by fostering a sense of belonging and opportunities to exchange ideas, we were talking about the idea of having students together produce, sort of by assigning topics to individual students, a dictionary of like terms of the course, or these are the topics or the subjects in the course, and like a short 500-word explanation of them, and then the students can do that sort of collaboratively, and then that can inform assessments later on. So they can produce sort of a course reader, or I don't know what it would be, like a glossary or a dictionary of the terms, and then the questions in a multiple choice exam could directly feed off that course material they've put together, and maybe even do it iteratively over multiple years. And I was thinking also possibly putting it online and having it so that the students know that the work that they're doing is going to end up being part of some wiki or online thing credited to them, saying, this entry was written by this student and this student.
Yeah, providing an authentic audience can be extremely motivating for students. And there are tools that are available to facilitate that kind of activity. So absolutely, nice idea. Any other thoughts? Ideas worth sharing with the whole group, or questions that came up in the group?
We had a very interesting example that was given by Sabrina. Sabrina, I don't know if you want to talk to it, but when she was doing to help with peer review, she invited a guest to speak about unconscious bias. And she was able also to give one-on-one feedback to her students. And I think that's a brilliant idea.
Thank you for sharing that, Virginie, and also Sabrina for the idea. Unconscious bias is topical these days, and yeah, it would be great to expose students to that.
Yeah, because sometimes we propose some activity, and if you have a small group, you are able to manage and adapt the course in accordance with their needs. So when I started to do the process for peer review, I realized some unconscious bias, and then I invited one person to do an extra class and talk about this. So, and we have a lot of materials in CIHR, and the government of Canada is putting available some courses I suggest them to do. And then we realized that all of us has unconscious bias, so we have to pay attention and really work towards to be best professional. So this is
Nice.
Thank you, Virginie.
Jenny, I see your note in the chat, and I think maybe you would like to say something about this.
All right, I would love to. It was just a note to you, Carolyn.
No, but
So,
we can make it bigger.
but we can make it bigger. Thank you. So I just wrote to Carolyn blog post because and we'll speak to the Teaching for Learning blog later, but TLS has a blog called Teaching for Learning blog, and I'll ask Carolyn to put the link to that in the chat. And one of the series that we have on the Teaching for Learning blog is a series in which we've invited different instructors at McGill who do peer review, peer feedback, peer assessment, it goes under many names, with their students to share their experience so that other instructors can learn from it. And because we know that instructors really value hearing from local examples, so we have instructors from many different faculties at McGill who explain why they do peer feedback, peer assessment, how it works out in their classes and so on. So we always just really like hearing about different examples of how instructors do peer assessment, why, and thinking about how those might be of interest to others.
And I'm really glad you brought that up, Jenny. And it's an opportunity to let all of you know that if you are doing any interesting teaching strategies with your students and you would like to share that, you can write for the TLS blog. It's low threshold in terms of, you don't have to worry about peer review. We're happy to have your ideas. And we accept blog posts, I think anywhere from like 250 words to like 1,250 words. So they can be you can write something quite short, just describing a strategy that you use that you might like to share with the McGill community and a little bit beyond. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Jenny. It's open to all of you. Okay, I don't see any other hands up, so I think we're going to move on because we still have a little bit more content today. We had talked about these 7 key ideas that can be helpful when designing your course more generally, like the overarching course design. But when it comes to planning the specifics, there were some bullet points that were under those key ideas that you were reading about in myCourses. So those can be useful when you're planning individual classes or individual class sessions. I am going to share my screen now because we have another resource for you. And I would like a sign. I've got Rose showing on my screen. So Rose, can you tell me what you see on the screen?
The web resource slide.
Okay, excellent. This is good. Okay, so another resource that we have for you is a web page on the TLS site. And the URL is at the bottom of the page, but I think Rose is also going to put that in the chat. And this is a web page where we have collected a number of questions that we receive regularly from instructors. And we put those questions on the web with a number of different strategies that can help to address those questions. And I think here I actually prefer to toggle to the website. So let me call this up. I do have it open here. I need to get rid of this. Oops, there we go. Okay, so this is the web page, and we've got all different questions here, and I'm just going to click on one of them. For example, how do I encourage discussion and get students to ask good questions? So if I click on that, I go to this page where I get a list of different ideas that can be helpful for generating discussion in class or fostering discussion. And you'll see at the beginning of most of these pages where it indicates how the strategies can be adapted, or not how, but that the strategies can be adapted for online use. So we won't have time right now for you to look through all the different pages. We're hoping that it's something you will be interested in taking a look at on your own. Perhaps you'll be seeking inspiration, and this will be a resource for you as you are looking for those different strategies to do that bridging that Jenny talked about earlier. Speaking of bridging, we're going to do an example now. Okay, let me just go back to our slides. We'll see about putting this into practice. So what you have on the screen here is alignment in practice. What strategies could bridge this learning outcome and assessment? So this should look familiar to you. It's the same example that we used in yesterday's webinar when we were talking about assessment. We have a learning outcome. On the left, students will be able to apply theoretical concepts to real-world problems. And then we have an example assessment on the right. It's not the only assessment possible, but in this case, we've chosen to give a take-home exam. And the students are given 3 scenarios that illustrate current societal problems. They are asked to explain the scenarios through the lens of a theory discussed during the course. So our question to you is, what strategies, what teaching strategies could be used to bridge the two? How can we help students prepare? What kind of opportunities for practice and feedback could we give them so that they will succeed at the learning, at the exam and at the learning outcomes? So I'll give you an example as one strategy. You could have students apply the theory or theories to a movie or to some documentary as a practice activity before they actually do the take-home exam. So now we're going to put the question to you: what strategies could bridge the learning outcome and the assessment? And we would invite you to put some ideas in the chat. I'm just going to open the chat so that I can see what comes in. And you don't have to pick ideas from the resources we've given you. If you have a strategy in mind that you've used before or something you've heard about, that would be okay too. Absolutely. Okay, so Virginie says, have a group discussion in class and give feedback on it. And you know what? That's a nice way of capturing the notion of feedback. Like often we think of feedback, like, you know, we have to grade our students. If we're having an in-class conversation and we comment on students' ideas, that is also a type of feedback, and it lets them know how well they're understanding the course content. And what else do we have? Naming 3 films that have at the core of the film 3 different societal stories. Yeah, giving a small resume of the film. Just wait to see if any other ideas come in. And just picking up on the idea of the small resume, it hasn't been indicated here if that would be in writing or if it would be oral. But these strategies, the teaching strategies, can be either or both. So if we think about the group discussion, of course, it can be oral if it's in a synchronous forum, but you could have students do that kind of discussion as well in myCourses in an asynchronous forum. We have another idea: give separate groups the same scenario and ask them each to apply a different theory to it and present back to the others. Yeah. Also a very good idea, and engaging when students work together and then have to report to each other. Just wait and see if any other ideas come in. Okay, so we have jeu de rôle. Un groupe d'étudiants joue un scénario sur un problème de société et l'autre groupe doit appliquer une théorie vue en classe en fonction du scénario. So this is really nice, like having students do a role play. And then that's a way of really embodying the content. And then they would play that out in class. Yeah. And then the other group has to apply the theory based on what has been played out in that scenario. That's really creative. And then we have another one building on Alex's suggestion. It could turn into a sort of debate. And that's nice. Again, very engaging, having to take different points of view. A twist on the debate is to ask students to debate positions that they don't actually believe in. And that requires preparation, but it can be a really good exercise in terms of getting into the heart of a matter, because you really have to look into what's sort of not obvious to you. Okay, so these are some really good ideas, and it sounds like you're on the right track. This is a place where you can be very creative with your teaching and you know, find ways to engage students that maybe they're not accustomed to, and they might be very motivated by that. All right, we'll keep going. Oh, yeah, the Jesuits' approach of debating. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we have pretty much touched on the main ideas that we wanted to address in this in the 3 days of the Course Design Essentials series. And in this particular session, we had 2 outcomes that Jenny had introduced at the beginning that you would be able to draw on key ideas that can inform your choice of instructional strategies, and identify learning-centered strategies that help students prepare to successfully complete their course assessments. So just by having the conversation and the practice activity just now, hearing, well, seeing what you put into the chat, I have a good sense that you get it. So that's been our feedback to us. More globally, we had these outcomes for the Course Design Essentials series, that by the end of all 3 sessions, you would be able to describe learning-centered course design principles and strategies. So we hope that you leave here with an understanding of alignment. That was a key one from the first day. And then there were others that followed in each of the individual sessions. And we hope that you would be able to apply these principles and strategies to the design or redesign of one of your courses. So we're not going to test you. We're not giving you an assessment, but we hope you will sort of test yourselves by trying to put this into practice. And we come back to the, let me just take this off the screen here. We come back to what will be in a minute, the course alignment plan. We have another exercise for you here, exercise 4, where we ask you to continue developing your course alignment plan by filling in the strategies. So I just want to put up this is what I want to have up here. Okay, so we encourage you to sort of test yourselves by continuing to fill in the course alignment plan. And we have another column here that we would encourage you to work on today before the afternoon session, which is the strategies. Could include low stakes assessments that allow students to practice and get feedback, but that prepare them for their major assessments. So this learning outcomes was on our first day. The major assessments was yesterday, and today we talked about the strategies, and this is what we're hoping you'll fill in. Now, there's another column here that we haven't spent a lot of time talking about. We did address this in the afternoon session yesterday. McGill has a number of technologies that allow you to implement strategies in very creative ways. So as you do your planning, we would encourage you to be thinking about different tools that you might want to use to implement the strategies. And I'm going to, let me just see what's been put in the chat. Yeah, so we've got the links there to the course alignment plan and to a page that has a list of McGill approved tools for teaching and learning. This afternoon, we have another connection opportunity. We hope you'll be able to join us to get more feedback on your plans as they develop. And what we're going to ask you to do right now, again, to help you continue thinking about the plan, because there's so much thinking involved in designing a course, is to take a minute to think about what your next step is as you prepare to teach in the fall term. So we'd like to know, you've spent 3 mornings with us, perhaps 2 afternoons with us. You've got some new ideas. What's your next step going to be with all of these things in mind? And we ask this question because it's a way for you to make a commitment and about what you want to do next, so that when you leave us, you're not necessarily going to be at sea about what to do. So it's for you to make a commitment to yourself about what to do next. And this is also a way to share information that could be inspiring for others. So if there's somebody who doesn't know what to do next, maybe they'll see your idea in the chat and think, oh, that's something maybe I can do. So let's take a minute and just, reflect on the content of the past 3 days, well, today included, so the past 2 plus today. And with that in mind, what's your next step going to be? And we would invite you to put that into the chat. Okay, so we've got a first one that's come in. I have to bring up my ideas for changing my part of the course with, oops, there it scrolled, with the other instructors responsible for the remainder of the course. Okay, so this is a co-teaching situation. Yeah, that's nice, especially as I'm considering changing an assessment method. Okay, and somebody who's going to be teaching starting on May 28th. So I will be working hard at preparing this grid now. And another one is making a rough calendar or schedule of what topics will be covered lecture by lecture, and thinking about how many lectures to devote to each topic. Same situation as somebody else who's teaching very soon and says, my course is ready, but I will work on engaging students. And somebody else identifying the specific readings I want to use to support each topic. Oh, listening to some podcasts. I wonder on what topic. Okay, on the topic of teaching. That sounds really good. Complete the course alignment plan and use that to prepare the course outline. So that's something we haven't really said much about, but there is information in the myCourses site. If you go to the next steps module, we do have information there about creating your course outline. And indeed, the course plan is intended to help you develop the course outline. We've got some others coming in. I'll rework the learning outcomes of my course and think first about the assessments, I will give to students then to determine the learning activities, and I will change my lectures. If there are good podcasts on teaching, I would like to hear about them. Jenny, I don't know how quickly you can find the link to, is it IDEA? Is it called IDEA?
I'll look into it.
Do you know which one I mean?
I think so.
Okay. If
Also,
not, we can find something.
I also
I have
just copied one, teaching in higher education. They have interesting stuff.
Okay, maybe that's the one I'm thinking of.
No, I think it's different. Idea. It's
Okay.
like,
Okay, but this is a very good one. So thanks for putting that in there, Maria. Excellent. Okay, and we have the link in the chat to the next steps in myCourses, where you'll find more information about what you can do post CDE. All right, we are coming to the end of the session. We do want to remind you about upcoming events at Teaching and Learning Services, well, that we're offering, and this will be online. And you can access the registration and additional information on the TLS events webpage. And I think a link is going to be put into the chat with that. And again, we encourage you to take a big stretch after sitting for this hour. It's challenging for the body, so we encourage you to do that. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and let's just see if there are any questions before we end today. Anything that people would like to bring up? We've got a few minutes. Yeah, so we have a link in the chat there to the course outline guide. I would encourage you to take a look at that. I'm checking to see if hands are up. I don't see hands up, but feel free to speak. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. This is a lot of fun for us. We're very keen to talk about course design and all things related to teaching. We love hearing the questions, and we really appreciate the conversation that those questions generate. So please don't hesitate.
Thank you very much.
Oh,
It's
very
really
welcome.
helpful. I would say one thing, me, I'm a turf person, une personne de terrain. So to have the words align with what we do for real is interesting. And it's helping after when you read some of the material that could be a little more academic. And when you're really like a case study oriented, then it helps to put the more academic terminology to the case study reality. And I found it very useful at that level for me, particularly, and also to make sure that my the usage of the language is really aligned as well with what is being used across the university and the courses. So thank you for that.
Well, we appreciate the feedback. That's really helpful. I will mention, of course, we hope to see you this afternoon so that you can get feedback and ask questions, but everybody is also welcome to have an individual consultation with TLS, and Jenny has just put the link in the chat. That's not just now, but anytime during the year. You can contact TLS and you're assigned to work with an academic associate, and we'll help you one-on-one. We can look at your course outline with you, not just your course plan, but if you've got a course outline ready and you'd like some feedback on it, or you have questions, if you're thinking of implementing a new teaching strategy, but you're not sure how to implement it, we can help you with that. If you're looking for tools to facilitate an implementation of a strategy, be it teaching or assessment, we have learning technology consultants who will help you with that. So please don't feel that you're on your own after this. We're here to support you. And this is what we do, and it's what we love doing. So it's not like you're bothering us when you contact us. Okay, so I think we're going to end there. We can stop the recording. And we will say